if I could have the next few minutes just to say some comments, and then the questions that I have, potentially the executive could follow up in writing if that's possible.
Councilmember Mosqueda, could you start with your question and then end with your comments so that they can actually hear the questions and leave, and you can get your comments in the public record?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Thank you so much.
The request was made for us to offer evidence-based solutions, and that the department and the executive would be all ears if we had evidence-based solutions to offer. I offer that the Civil Rights Act passed and ended 6 days of riots when action was taken. And so my questions for the executive are, given that we heard from the chief that she is tired and her folks are tired, we're asking folks to act. We are saying, instead of waiting the month that it will take in order for the investigations to happen, as we've heard from Director Meyerberg and others, we want there to be action now. So my first question is, will you stop using tear gas today? Because when you deploy tear gas in dense neighborhoods, people are harmed. The folks who live there, the people in the street, and frankly, it is part of the reason people continue to come out to the street day to day, because they see that excessive use of force and the use of tear gas. So my question is, will you stop using tear gas? Hearing no answer and waiting for that to become in writing, I'll go to my second question. Will you stop using flashbang devices? Like the ones that we saw in the video that were just showed by Councilmember Lewis and the ones that we've seen repeatedly online. Will you stop using those devices as they're causing harm, bodily harm to people who are there peacefully protesting, harm to reporters who have been trying to cover this at the national level? Will you stop using those flashbang devices? Hearing no question, I'll go to the next one. Answer, I'll go to the next one. Will you stop deploying rubber bullets? My understanding is that the Seattle Police Department is in charge of any of the folks who we come in through the memorandum that we have for additional allies, or I should say additional departments, whether that's State Patrol or National Guard. If the city of Seattle maintains direction and control over those officers who are coming into the city of Seattle, will the order come from the city of Seattle to stop using rubber bullets? Hearing no answer, I'll go on to the next. Will you stop arresting people? We are in the middle of a deadly pandemic. We have tried to do everything we can to de-densify jails and shelters. And any arrests that are happening right now are putting people in harm's way of being exposed to COVID. Will you stop arresting people so that we don't have more people exposed to COVID? Hearing no answer, going to the next question. Instead of waiting a month for the investigations to happen, will you immediately take action to fire the officers and provide some discipline for those who we know have been acting inappropriately or illegally? For example, we've seen action in Florida. An officer was suspended for pushing a woman over. In Atlanta, 2 officers were fired for their excessive use of force. In Denver, a police officer was fired for saying, "Let's start a riot." When I'm looking at a dispatch post from yesterday, noting that there was an officer that said, "Shoot them all," will there be action taken on the individuals who we know what their badge numbers are, and immediate action so we don't have to wait for the investigation? Hearing no answer, will you revisit the de-escalation strategies that I think Councilmember Lewis was directly asking about, so that we don't see these type of actions deployed tonight, tomorrow, and over the next X number of days or weeks? Finally, will you do all of the above so that we can actually begin to rebuild trust in our community? People will continue to come out to the street, as they should, to protest against this type of force. If we show that there's going to be a difference in strategy, then people will begin to see that there's going to be a change, and their protests and their calls for action are being heard. I think this council has been very clear in the last few days as we've gathered. We are very interested in redeploying resources. As you saw from my blog post yesterday, we want to follow through on the commitments that many people have talked about, so that the first person that you call or the first person you get when you call 911, if it's a mental health issue or an issue related to someone who's unsheltered outside or trying to call for help in your own home, is not met with force, and instead we have more community policing solutions and community driven solutions. So will you do all of the above so that we can actually see peace come back and for people's words and actions to be followed through on? They are asking for different tactics. They are asking for a demilitarization of the police, and they are asking for people to hear their calls for less people to die.